Mass upsurge of Bangladesh. Currently, Bangladesh is at the headline of most international news. The student unrest in the capital city, which is becoming more and more aggressive along with each passing day, and government's crackdown in response is producing headlines. Their demand is removal of 44% reservation in the government employment. At the root of such unrest is chronic unemployment that third world governments have never ever been able to address other than surrendering to Western predatory loans. The movement is being catalyzed by the main opposition political party called Bangladesh Nationalist Party or BNP and a Pakistan-based Muslim fundamentalist party called Jamaat-e-Islami. Opportunist political parties ostensibly support the students' movement since their aim has everything to do with grabbing political power by taking advantage of the student unrest. Political leadership of South Asian countries or countries of the third world, for that matter, can't think of any other thoughtful and constructive solution to curb public unrest other than using brutal police force. The use of constructive, thoughtful solutions is not in the political culture of these countries. The governments of South Asian countries, as they make liberal use of brutal force, are not intellectually competent to think of engaging a parallel team of peacekeepers entrusted with the task of finding the real cause of the unrest and its possible solutions. This kind of solution to public unrest is not expected from the political leadership of these countries. Why? Because that the leadership is mentally underdeveloped and a large segment of that belongs to the underworld. The government of Bangladesh, as expected, is trying to curb this unrest with brutality of police and security guards. That led to the death of about 140 dissident students. This is very common in the countries of South Asia like India and Pakistan. Instead of supporting or opposing such an upsurge, let us deal with the background of such problem. In the year 1971, the people of Bangladesh, former East Pakistan, mobilized and separated themselves from the rule of West Pakistan. The ruling class of West Pakistan, Bengalis claimed, was exploiting the East and enriching themselves. For the Bengalis to prosper, they must detach themselves from the West Pakistan rule and establish a sovereign state. Such thoughts spread like wildfire, which was taken full advantage of by the then Indian government, and Bangladesh was formed. At that time, population of East Pakistan was 7 crores or 70 million. Today, 53 years later, other than 2.5 times rise of Bangladesh population, which is now 17 crores or 170 million, governments of Bangladesh can be credited with much else. In relation to this data, let us make a comparative analysis between Russia and Bangladesh having comparable population size. Russian monarchy was replaced by a revolutionary government of Lenin in the year 1917. About 28 years after the setup of the new revolutionary government, Russia as a nation became strong enough to defeat the powerful army of Adolf Hitler in 1945 and reached the status of a superpower 53 years later. In the year 1970, Russia was the second superpower. Currently, population of Russia is about 14 crore, which is less than that of Bangladesh. In this context, just reflect on the difference in the international influence of Bangladesh and Russia. Both countries have more or less the same population size. Similarly, reflect on the difference between the influence of China and India. The population size of both countries is roughly equivalent. If all men are created equal, then how and why nations having comparable population size differ so radically in the way they exert influence in the world? Common people remain totally ignorant and oblivious about the real cause of such glaring difference. The socio-economic plight and degradation of the general population is linked to their substandard low-quality political leadership remains a carefully concealed secret. The general population is tricked into believing in their non-existent prosperity and development. This perpetual exercise of self-deception of general population is a well-planned project of the Anglo-American media. To be more precise, what are the underlying factors responsible for glaring difference in the international influence of countries having comparable population size like that of Russia and Bangladesh or China and India? Why are we alluding to such comparison? The brutal fact remains inclusive development and prosperity requires conditioning of general masses through school and schooling that is structured with the language, culture, tradition and history of the nation in question. An organized and disciplined workforce of peasants, workers and intellectuals, thus conditioned, is a formidable prerequisite and arsenal for all inclusive growth and development of any given nation. Current pauperized conditions of Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Africa and Latin America are direct results of low quality, inept and corrupt political leadership and their underdeveloped way of thinking. Social upsurge that is currently taking place in Bangladesh is widespread throughout most of the impoverished countries, which sometimes lead to change of governments. Yet, such change of governments hardly ever leads to socio-economic prosperity and development like the one that has taken place in countries like China, Russia, Cuba, Vietnam, and North Korea. No matter how many times governments change in Bangladesh, that will not have or cannot have any impact on the impoverishment and pauperization of common people, irrespective of what growth rate and balance of payment curves indicate. Of all the prosperous countries, whether they are right-wing nations of West Europe or left-wing nations like that of Russia, China, Vietnam, North Korea, may differ in many aspects of politics and economics, yet they have remarkable similarities in one crucial area, that is, their political leadership is dedicated to organizing their general masses and conditioning them to become disciplined workforce and engage them in constructive tasks of nation building. The process of conditioning the population to become disciplined workforce is achieved through thoroughly indigenized schools and schooling. Such achievement is the key to social and economic prosperity of any given nation. What are the important factors or salient features that determine or explain the difference between the developed and underdeveloped nations? The underlying cause of this difference is plain and simple. No mainstream media will touch upon it for political reasons. The difference is, on one hand, the quality of political leadership. On the other hand, it is the population size. These two factors make all the difference. It may be asked, is it the quality of political leadership that makes all the difference? Or there are inherent differences in the quality of human resources among various nations? Indeed, difference exists in the quality of human resources between Russia and Bangladesh, between China and India. These differences are most definitely not inherent but acquired. The current population of Bangladesh and India are descendants and bearing the legacy of a civilization that is 10,000 years old. It is these impoverished and pauperized people of Bangladesh who once built great empires. It is they who just 2 centuries ago used to contribute 35% of the world's GDP. Same people once enriched the world's civilization with valuable contributions in the areas of science, industry, philosophy, architecture, etc. Yet, the same population and their nation has entered into a stage of prolonged inertia. Just recently, in the year 1917, it was Russia, and in 1949, it was China. Their respective populations suffered serious setback and experienced incredible privations in their socio-political life due to lack of political leadership. Today, these two nations have turned around and brought about incredible success in their socio-political life. Similar examples can be cited with reference to prosperous countries of Western Europe. Even though countries of Western Europe, Russia and China differs considerably in their political, economic and social ideologies. Yet they have something in common in a few key areas. All these prosperous societies consider their human resource as the most important and valuable possession in their national life. Inclusive growth and prosperity of their nation is their declared priority. Let it be known, right from the start of their new social system, both Russia in 1917 and China in 1949 have openly declared that of all the wealth and resources their nation possess, the most important is their human resource. All available wealth and resources, therefore, must be employed for the overall growth, prosperity, and development of their marginalized population. The primary goal of all prosperous nations is to create a disciplined workforce. Unless the shaping of a disciplined workforce by whatever means possible is accomplished, a society or a nation can never achieve inclusive growth, prosperity, and development. How and where this shaping of disciplined workforce takes place? In brief, it can be stated that it is school and schooling that shapes a nation. That is, school and schooling must be thoroughly shaped under the influence of indigenous culture, lifestyle, history, and resources, where members of the society are in turn conditioned to work and think in the greater interest of the nation. A nation thus conditioned acquires respect and reverence of the whole world. Any nation that uses an imitation education system that scavenges on the leftovers of others are destined to languish in the underdevelopment, poverty, and social degeneration. An honest review of achievements of all the nations that are considered developed and prosperous clearly reveals that amid all their differences, what they have common is their thoroughly indigenized education system. On one hand, there is achievements of Western Europe, Japan, and South Korea, who became prosperous through exploitation and plunder of human and natural resources of others. There are nations like China, Russia, Vietnam, North Korea, and Cuba, whose prosperity is intimately linked not to exploitation and plunder. Instead, it is the powerful visionary leadership that has reshaped human resources through indigenous schooling and engaged an awakened population to work in the interest of their own nation. The community of youth in Bangladesh is suffering from terrible frustration because of their hopeless prospect of the future, which forces them to take the struggle into the street. This is a legitimate struggle, no doubt, but this mass discontent will be taken advantage of by some vested interest group, be it an opposition party inside the country or an opportunist Western power. Until and unless the exploited masses of the street are not made conscious of the source of their plight, futile street fighting originating from frustration will continue. The police brutality and use of police violence will continue as it has been for the last 50 years. The purpose of our narrative is to expose the concealed truth of those who are victims of deception and fraudulence. Youth must be made to understand that just another political party in power will never ever make any difference in their lives. Youth must realize that political parties in their country may change, but their policies will not. Periodic elections and change of political party are being publicized as democracy. Yes, it is democracy, but not for the indigenous population like you and me. But that democracy is for the benefit of Anglo-American West. Your life will change only when you install a political leadership who will forcefully declare that they consider marginalized people, who are 90% of the population, to be the most precious wealth and formidable power of the nation. That political leadership has well-defined plans to install schools, schooling, and healthcare at the national expense. That political leadership believes that a nation who fails to give birth to a poet, a novelist, a scientist, a composer of thoroughly indigenized culture is a dead nation. Political leadership having the courage to declare with pride and self-confidence that we deserve far better than this poverty-stricken, chaotic, corrupt social life infested with imitation culture. We deserve all the best and the greatest things in the world because we are one of the most brilliant nations on earth, and history is witness to our claim. Even though we are reduced to our minimum existence because of miserable political leadership, we can liberate ourselves from this miserable existence. We must dedicate ourselves to this conviction that we are one of the most brilliant nations on earth and equal to all. History is the witness. Look for that political leadership who has the courage to rediscover and openly declare such belief in public. Think for a moment. Who is driving you? Where are you heading? In which direction are you heading? Wake up. My name is Kallol Guha.